They actually presented the information, and then they had a quiz or an assignment or practice associated with that particular video. And they felt like that was a more beneficial way for the students to be able to learn the concepts and the instruction, also for them to be able to kind of test their learning and reasoning before they actually came to the classroom. So we're talking about flipped classrooms today, and I'm your host, Buffy Williams, and we're going to take a short break, and I will be with you after the break.
Right now, you might be struggling through your classes or even failing them. You might be worried that you may not finish high school. There might have even been a thought that you may not be smart enough. Well, the New Heights Educational Group begs to differ. We not only think you are smart enough, but with our help, you will complete your high school diploma. The New Heights Educational Group strives to improve your academic success through its tutoring services. To learn more, please visit newheightseducation.org and contact us. New Heights Educational Group, educational resources to help reach your goals.
This podcast is brought to you by Silicon Valley High School, the world's fastest growing, video-based, self-paced, teacher-supported, fully accredited online school that's recommended by more than 96% of students. Take individual courses at just $95 each, or earn your high school diploma at any age. Check us out at svhs.co.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Buffy Williams, and you're listening to the New Heights Educational Group, the New Heights Show on Education. And tonight's topic is flipped classrooms. And we were talking about flipped classrooms and another method of utilizing flipped classrooms before the break. But also, flipped classrooms is coming into the mainstream, and I know that this is a term that maybe some of you have already heard because it kind of started back in 2013. So, of course, you know, they've had a number of years to kind of move this into mainstream. So, Bergman and Sams have actually completed a book that kind of helps teachers, and so it helps educators, and so they go to conferences, education conferences, and they present information on flipped classrooms, and they train teachers on how to utilize this method and pilot it within their schools. And so this particular platform, teachers everywhere have created ways to share videos as well. So that's an emerging trend, so that maybe a teacher has a particular subject, and so they're looking at ways that teachers can maybe not even create the content themselves, but you utilize content that's already been created. And so with the emergence of Khan Academy, which is a free resource that is a philanthropy mission that is free to all students, they're also looking at incorporating, because Khan Academy has this plethora of online instructional material and media that possibly, well, Bill Gates said that, you know, this particular tool can be integrated within the flipped classroom. So instead of the instructor actually teaching the course themselves, they could embed the video that's already been created and use that as a new instructional approach. But they also caution that, you know, the real danger is that, you know, it may be a reduction in the number of students. It could just be a fad, and students may not, you know, gravitate towards it naturally. But they also caution that, you know, sometimes with any concept, and that's with all of us, it takes some time to actually understand, you know, the inner workings of a new concept. You know, you've been doing something for so long, so there are going to be critics out there no matter what you do. But they also find that the ideas behind flipped classrooms is not new. The National Center for Academic Transformation also had colleges that kind of experimented with this idea in the areas of math, science, and English, and a couple of other disciplines. And they thought that it led to improved learning, and the students seemed to be re-engaged, and it improved their motivation, and also set proper expectations for monitoring the student throughout the process. And so, many of these courses were redesigned, and they focus on incorporating more project-based learning opportunities. And they do also say that, some of the dangers of this is that, there's a battle between the teacher and the technology, and how are you going to balance that? But also looking at the fact that when you recruit and train teachers, that you need to make sure that you support your quality teachers so that they are able to utilize this method, and there's not such a they call it deprofessionalism. So it's like you don't have the actual professional teaching the course. You actually have technology teaching your students. And so there's got to be a balance there. And so in some ways, these criticisms can help build a program, because it shows you maybe where your weaknesses may be, right? And so with that, you can utilize that information and not look at it in a negative sense, but use it to enhance your instructional process if you're thinking about incorporating flipped classrooms within your classroom structure. And so with those instructional videos and interactive simulation, there are, different ways that educators and administrators can control that process and then make it more adaptive to their particular school, and also, guide the educators through making, smart decisions as it relates to transforming a classroom into a potential flipped classroom. And so it may be a buzzword now, but one of the things is that it just focuses on how do students gain their first exposure to new material outside of the classroom. And so you have this one method where, it's via reading or lecture videos. And then the students use their time to do the harder work in the actual classroom, doing problem solving or simulating discussion, or it could be debate over a particular topic. And so that means that the lower level cognitive work takes place outside of the classroom. And then, of course, the more upper level thinking or regarding the traditional model would be in the classroom. And so if you think about it, they're really focusing on the higher cognitive area within the classroom, which is, supporting the students through, application and analysis of the material, and then evaluating whether or not that actual material was retained. And so, and looking at, flipped classrooms and focusing on the process, and the part of learning that, allows the students to kind of analyze the material, they gain that first exposure at home. And so it's just, I guess, a given that you think that these students are engaged, that actually have a fundamental knowledge or an underlying knowledge of the content material, because that's another critical point, because all the students need to have an opportunity to provide, proper feedback. But if they don't have the foundation secure, then that could be a flaw in the model. So that, when you actually incorporate the flipped classrooms in some way, you're going to have varying results depending on the foundational knowledge of the student. And so that's with any instructional model. You're always going to have a particular set that are going to instantly gravitate towards whatever knowledge is being proposed, and then you're going to have those that struggle. And so you're going to have to find a way to be able to do that. But the argument is that if the students don't understand that knowledge, that the teacher has more time to work with them one-on-one. And so there are different types of exposure. First exposure, so you can have, the students reading the textbooks, the lecture videos by the teacher, or you can have PowerPoint presentations with voiceovers. And then you can also have printed PowerPoint slides. So those are like the first exposures. And then this can ensure that the students are prepared with the concepts, and they could also complete a worksheet periodically and randomly judged by the teacher. So it encourages the student, they don't know when it's going to be graded. So the thought there is that they would pay more attention to the lesson because they don't exactly know when it's going to be collected. And then they could use that class time and spend that on activities and process and application of the actual lesson, whether that's through mini lectures or small group discussions. And this tends to, they say, motivate the students more because of that first exposure is so varied. And so it tackles the student like maybe me, who is a varied learner in learning approaches. And so it gives them different ways in which to retain the information. And then regarding their peer instruction, it's described as a form of, it's called the peer instruction PI model, and it requires the student to gain their first exposure prior to class using quizzes and case studies. And so then that would mean that they would be presented with the material, and then they would actually receive a quiz to say that they have a conceptual learning of whatever the material is. And also another approach to that would be they come to class and all the students are given a clicker and they're given multiple choice answers, and all the students at one time answer the question. And if you have a large number of students that don't understand the question, then the teacher would have an opportunity to present to the class either in small groups, or maybe they would have, maybe typically 13 to 15 minutes to kind of discuss why it is that some of them pick this answer versus the correct answer. And then they would use that as an instructional model. And so, Harvard has done studies on this, and there have been other published studies on flipped classrooms and, lectures via this method, and looking at whether or not the student and the instructor receive the proper feedback in order for this to be a workable model. And so, researchers are doing a lot of information on this, and they have a lot of information and context for you to look at the framework, and also look at opportunities to provide this to your students, and hopefully provide you with an alternative way of presenting your classroom material. Again, there are key elements within this flipped classroom method. One is providing students an opportunity to gain more exposure prior to class. Then providing an incentive for students to be prepared for class by doing like online quizzes and workshops, worksheets, and other assignments. And then providing a mechanism for them to access student understanding. So the student is prepared. They have these pre-classes, pre-quizzes, and then it can be instruction just in time, right? So the students have activities that are focused on the key elements of where they're struggling, because they've taken the quiz ahead of time, so they know the areas that didn't resonate with them, and they can pinpoint specific areas, if that makes sense to you guys. And then the last one is that it provides in-class activities that focus on a higher level of cognitive activities. And so if the student has gained the basic knowledge outside of the classroom, then they need to spend the class time to promote deeper learning. But they also